And we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your hosts, Blake Ruffino, co-host Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my co-host and counterpart, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir. How are you?
I am doing fantastic, especially today. We get to kick off our conference previews. Yes. Another fun show as we're getting so dang close to the start of the season. I'm not shocked, a little bit, not trying to spoil anything, but I'm not shocked that you and I are pretty much on the same page for our preseason rankings.
So just a sidebar to everybody that will watch this show. We had talked about this on Monday and started to prep for our SEC, Big 10, Big 12, ACC rankings. And do you want to see my garbage can? Because it's got all the
scrap it a bunch.
I drafted a bunch of these, but nevertheless, we are here to talk about the SEC rankings, powered by our new friends over at FanDuel. Go over to FanDuel today. We're going to tell you a lot of these odds and talk a lot about our good friends over at FanDuel. But, Joe, we got a new sponsor in the house. Want to talk about our good friends over at FanDuel, and welcome to the show.
Yes, we're very excited to be partnered with FanDuel. I have been using FanDuel for quite a bit since I ended up living in a legal state that betting is legal, and by far the best app. Easily the best app, has the best odds, the most unique picks that you can put out there. So I'm more than juiced up. This is something that's been in the works for a little bit.
Yes.
Very excited that Believe was able to make this happen for us, but it's going to be a really fun season being able to rep FanDuel and being able to talk about them.
Must be 18 years or older in some states, selective states. Find your state today for you to be able to do that. 21 in most states, must be in the state when you are placing that bet. For gambling problems, call 1-800-GAMBLING. That's 1-800-GAMBLING if you have that problem, or just go over to their support page today. But we will be talking about a lot of the odds through FanDuel here. But, Joe, there is some fall camp intel before we break down the SEC. I'm just going to ask you, as a Notre Dame fan yourself, as we kind of talk about some of these fall camp intel stuff. Tennessee blurred their quarterback in an interception that was thrown in one of the videos today. Are you a little worried that C.J. Carr at Notre Dame kind of it started off a little slow here during preseason camp?
I'm not worried because this is something that we talked about when Stephen Jelly entered the transfer portal, Blake, is that Kenny Minchey was a more viable option to start the season than people realized. Mm-hmm. They had three guys that they felt confident enough going into spring ball that they'd be willing to let them compete. They wouldn't have told Stephen Jelly to leave if they didn't think either Kenny Minchey or CJ Carr couldn't get the job done. I think that Kenny Minchey's a little bit of a better athlete, and this is, again, something that we talked about way back in the spring, that his tools work a little better for Denbrock's offense, for what he wants to accomplish. I think if CJ Carr does struggle and he doesn't end up being the starter, there is nothing to truly worry about because Minchey has been doing a great job. There being two options to turn to makes this situation a lot more viable, and it's something that Notre Dame hasn't had quite a bit at the quarterback position since Brian Kelly left. First couple of years, we're dealing with Drew Pine and Tyler Buckner. Now you have an opportunity to pick between two guys that are gifted. One of them just needs to separate, and it seems like Minchey's doing it at the current moment.
I'm going to push back. Anytime that you have a young quarterback, I literally talked about my own team in doing this, a first-time starter. So I don't want to hear that this is any form of bias of me when I literally last offseason came in here and said it about the team that I cover and the own quarterback and team that I root for. No, it's not good. Let me tell you something that I am in the minority of when it comes to being at practices. Practice reps become game reps when real live bullets are flying. You remember a season ago I came in here and said, Joe Garrett's throwing way too many picks. I got ridiculed for it. Now listen, is Kenny Minchey potentially, if he can not turn the ball over, going to win that job? Yes. But I do think that you're seeing a lot of youth at that position, and I think there's a couple of things that are going to happen here. Notre Dame's going to have to out-physical everybody within the first 6 games of the season because you're not going to want a quarterback in a dire situation to go into somewhere with a good defense, with the game on the line, and having to throw the pill around. John, all right. I don't know enough about Kenny Minchie. You go right on ahead and think when you're turning the ball over, even if it's a really good defense, it is a big deal.
Okay, but I think that we can have this conversation and not land on opposite ends of the spectrum. There is a middle ground, I think, to be had with this. I think that there is a middle ground to think, okay, maybe whoever starts at quarterback, if it is Kenny Minchie, and I agree with you, by the way. If you're throwing picks and you're having these many turnovers at the beginning of training camp, that stuff usually does show up during the season. It means you're making mistakes. You're not seeing the field the way that you need to. Sometimes young guys are not as ready as we hope them to be.
Correct.
But I think with Minchie, him being a better athlete, and you just said there, them having an ability to run the ball with a good O-line and 4 deep at running back, that they can run the ball a ton. They did it last year. They survived last year running the ball a lot. Ryan Leonard made some great plays extending the pocket and throwing on the run or evading pressure. That's something that they won't have, that same level of pocket presence right off the bat. But the fact that they were able to survive last year by not leaning on the passing game was fine for them. So I understand where you're coming from. I just can't go all the way with the
problem with last year is that your schedule is a lot tougher this one than it was a season ago. Teams are A&M's better this year than they were in game 1 with Elko. I think that we can both agree with that, right? Yeah. Yes. But again, I'm telling you, Kenny Minchie, and I agree with you on this, based off of what Denbrock wants to do, okay, and getting outside the pocket a lot and having somebody that will run the football at that position, I do think Kenny Minchie, if that is the case, may find himself in a unique position in week 1. Regardless of that, even he, per reports, we were not there, but per people who were there for the practice, it was one guy threw 3 interceptions, and then the conversation around Notre Dame was Minchie wasn't better when it was time to throw the football either. So again, based off the video that I sent you, based off of people that were there, if you're throwing interceptions and the guy didn't separate himself, my question becomes, well, then what was he doing? So again, we will monitor that. But it's not as if that Notre Dame doesn't have a tough schedule in the first 6 weeks. They got some tough challenges with young quarterbacks for a first-time starter. I will agree with you on some middle ground. It's not everything, but you do it a lot, it can become something. Joe, is there anything over the weekend other than Notre Dame, before we get into the SEC here, that stood out to you from fall camp intels?
Well, nothing from fall camp, but I do think we should bring light to what we were planning on talking about here, the LSU recruiting wins that they've had over the weekend. We spent time talking about recruiting for some of these other teams, but we haven't given any love to LSU yet.
LSU got Deuce Geralds to commit this past weekend. Joe, it's the 4th top 100 defensive line commit for the Tigers and Brian Kelly, with Lamar Brown, who's the number 2 overall recruit in the country per on 3, with Trenton Henderson, who's also a 5-star, Richard Anderson, Deuce Geralds, DeAnthony Lafayette, and Darius McKinley. Joe, I'm gonna let you go because I've had a lot to say about this already on other platforms and other shows. Austin Thomas, GM. That's the answer. I think LSU, for what it's worth in recruiting, I don't want to say this because I don't want to bring up old things, but post Bryce Underwood and post getting Austin Thomas on board, Joe, they haven't been pushed in lockers like they have in high school recruiting for some of these guys. Lamar Brown, Deuce Geralds, Tristan Keys, Trenton Henderson. I think this one with Deuce Geralds was a little bit different because of it being Oregon. In the past, LSU lost that battle, a.k.a. DeCorian Moore. I think it's just a little bit different based off of what they want to do. And look, you got 4 defensive linemen in the top 100 that are committed at the current moment. LSU and Brian Kelly doing some really good things defensively.
Well, I think the biggest part with this is understanding where the weaknesses lied on this roster. There was a lack of depth at defensive line, especially at defensive tackle, and that has been the primary focus in recruiting. It is such a recurring theme that we get to all the time when we talk about teams that are dominating week in and week out. It's those that develop and recruit well on offensive and defensive lines. Simple enough. The point where they're at right now with all these guys that are in the top 100 of most rankings, that is where this takes another step. We didn't talk about the Lamar Brown commitment when it happened, but that was one that really, really caught my attention. That was a guy in your backyard that was publicly tweeting about maybe going to Texas A&M. He was very public about it. He was very out there talking about maybe getting guys to come with him to go to Texas A&M on social media, and he decides to stick and stay in Louisiana. Even if he doesn't stay at defensive line, he will be a really impactful guard for you. He's listed as an athlete, so he can play either side of the ball, which is awesome.
Tackle.
Right. That's where the money is from
Correct.
From when I did a breakdown on him on the A to Z Sports Film Room channel. Kind of one of the things that we talked about is it sounds like he wants to play defensive line because there's more money to earn there in the NFL. It's hard to get paid a lot when you're a guard. He is super explosive. He's super powerful. All of these guys are going to put together a really nice supporting cast. But I think Lamar Brown is where this goes over the top because you've got all these rotational guys, and then Lamar Brown could be kicking some serious ass.
I agree with that. And listen, I think there's a little bit of a different philosophy of what they're doing. Number one, I do think like guys like Darius Gray, the number one interior offensive lineman in the country, still out there. Joe, they're being very selective at skill. They're not being very selective along both lines of scrimmage. They brought in the top two interior offensive linemen in last class with Solomon Thomas, who was at number one, and Carius Kern, that was at number two. You turn right around, and defensively they're doing it. And listen, you went out post Bo Davis and got a guy named Kyle Williams, who's an All-American 2 times at LSU. It was in the league in Buffalo for, I think, 13 years. He's never really recruited. But technique-wise has been a really big deal for him. Lamar Brown, Deuce Geralds, Rich Anderson, all have talked about him recruiting in the first time. I think that's significant. Now, Joe, there are a couple of things I'd say for LSU if you're an LSU fan listening to this. I think there's a philosophy change on just dominating both lines of scrimmage, which if you go look at their recruiting class in the top 10, that's what they've done and will continue to do. But at the same time, being very selective at receiver and corner and DB. I still think that they're a class away. And, Joe, if you go look at the 2027 recruiting class and you look inside the state of Louisiana, they have 3 of the top 10 guys in the country right now. You have Elijah Haven. You got a couple of defensive ends. You have a tight end in Ahmad Hudson. Joe, I'm just going to throw this out there, a little tidbit. I think that LSU will stay around 20 to 22. I do not believe that they're going to get in the top 3 or 4 in reference to because they won't get enough commits. However, if you look at the 2027 class, I do believe that they will go all out on guys like Elijah Haven. They'll go out for like Hudson and things like that. So when you look at their class, it's a little bit different. I do think they'll attack the portal again a little bit, kind of like they did. But, Joe, again, I think that Brian Kelly is a lot of things. At LSU, I'm just going to tell you, not really recruiting has not been one of them. I think that LSU as a plan has not necessarily with him had a plan. So he's needed a little bit more help and assistance. You had a coach that went out there and said, hey, guys, I need help in NIL. Well, the fan base started helping him. That's where I think LSU has started to separate themselves in recruiting just a little bit. I don't think it had anything to do with staff. I think it had to go with they didn't have a plan. They weren't organized. And now that they are, some different things are happening.
The last part with this, and you kind of alluded to it by bringing up Elijah Haven being a big target for them for 2027. And
number one player on their board. I'll just go ahead and tell you. And
yeah, I mean, he should be. He's from Baton Rouge.
Right.
He's like the second coming of Vince Young. He is massive. He can move. His highlights from his state championship victory are kind of hilarious. Yeah, they're hilarious to watch because you see him on the field and it looks like you're watching a 4-year NFL vet, the way that he's built, the way that he moves, the way that he can throw and all the crazy stuff he does on the field. Grabbing him is going to be really important for 2027. But I do wonder what happens in 2026. Do they get any of these quarterbacks? Do they end up flipping somebody? A lot of these quarterbacks are already committed. So it's really weird and hard to try and project if any of these 4 stars or maybe if any of these 5 stars might make a last-second decision change. Like, could they maybe make a run at Faison Brandon if things go a little bit weird here with Tennessee and they're a little bit rocky this season? That would be the first guy that I'm paying attention to if they could make a crazy unexpected pull.
I know that you're just somewhat assuming here, but I think it's a very good assumption by you to say what you just said. They're not done at quarterback. Okay. I don't think he'll be facing Brandon because of the simple nature of Elijah Haven being on the wings. I do think they're still in there with Bo Bentley. Considering what happens with Oklahoma, I think is more of the thing here. Last thing I'd say, in reference to your quarterback situation, I fully agree. Running back as well. If I'm Ohio State, I'm watching Blaine Bradford pretty closely. That's all I'm going to say.
There's enough dots to connect there.
It's enough dots to connect there. But on our message board, I'll just say this. My pick for him to go to Ohio State has been lifted. So there you go.
Speaking of Ohio State, by the way, we got a super chat from Elks before.
Speaking of Ohio State, Elks with a $5 super chat says your boy bought his first car, a 2019 Ford Edge SEL, no more 2011 sedan. For my 6'3" ass, I never knew how badly I needed rain-sensing wipers in Florida.
I love how we slowly learn more and more about Elks. I didn't know he was in Florida.
Didn't know he was 6'3".
Didn't know he was 6'3". We're learning a lot about Elks. Well, congrats on getting the new car, though. Appreciate you sending in the super chat.
Yeah, it's always great peace of mind to know that you have something reliable. Right? I mean, that's pretty much the whole thing. Right. Well, thank you very much, Elks, for the super chat. All right, Joe, let's get rolling here. Everybody do us a favor by hitting the like and share to all those groups if you're on Facebook and to all those social media pages. You're watching us, listening to us on YouTube, like, subscribe, notification bell, and wherever you listen to podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe. Joe, we are off. The season is almost here, only a couple more weeks away, and this is when we start doing our conference predictions. Tonight we start off with the SEC from top to bottom. Where do you have the rankings as of right now, year 1 through 16 in the SEC?
All right. To start me off, by the way, on FanDuel, Texas is favored at plus 280. Georgia is also favored the same odds at plus 280. My ranking, that being said, it's basically a 1A, 1B, but a prediction is required. I have Texas 1, Georgia 2, LSU 3, Bama 4, Florida 5, Texas A&M 6, Ole Miss 7, Tennessee 8, South Carolina 9, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Auburn, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, and rounding out with Kentucky finishing last.
Mine are as follows, also by FanDuel. Some other things in there. Bama plus 480 in there, Joe, if you want to get on that. But Georgia at number 1, Texas at number 2, LSU 3, Bama 4, Ole Miss 5, Florida coming in at 6, which I might even change my projections and move Oklahoma to 6 and Florida down. I might tell myself into that, but regardless, that's where we stand. South Carolina 8, A&M 9, Tennessee 10, Missouri, Auburn, and Vandy at 11, 12, and 13. Arkansas at 14, Miss State at 15, and Kentucky finishing and rounding out the conference. Joe, these are our predictions. Let's start off with the top here. You go with the University of Texas. They are on FanDuel, plus 280 to win the conference, along with the University of Georgia. But when you look at Texas, you have picked them to win the SEC. I ask you why.
I think that looking at how this team is transitioning from last year into 2025, they're returning a lot of important players at key positions. And most importantly, this has been a driving force for discussion this offseason for us. They're one of the few teams that's bringing back like really crazy blue chip talent. We're talking about Colin Simmons, who was unbelievable as a rotational pass rusher last year as a true freshman. We're talking about Anthony Hill, a former 5-star linebacker who's a battering ram. We're talking about Ryan Wingo at wide receiver, who did some nice things as a true freshman. And of course, Arch Manning at the helm. I know that they're moving on from a couple of offensive linemen, and I think that's where some people might have some pause. But where this team has been in recruiting, there are a lot of guys coming up next that might be even better than the group that they had last year. Tyler Gooseby is one that I have my eye on from a draft perspective. That kid is freaking gifted. Could have a little bit of an Amarius Mims type jump after seeing a little bit of action at the end of the season for the Longhorns. My biggest reason, though, Blake, I think a lot of times it's hard to invest in a first-time starter. So number of first-time starters at the top here.
Mm-hmm.
Arch Manning is one of the few guys that I'm willing to bet on because he has been around the game for so long and has such a natural ability to impact the game. And more importantly, was behind Quinn Ewers, made a lot of back-breaking mistakes that killed them last year. I think that Arch is going to reel it in a little bit better. Having exposure to what he needs to improve on will be a driving force for them to win the SEC.
In my notes, I have Georgia at 1A. I have Texas at 1B. I don't really care where you put either one of them. If you told me today Texas won and I went in a coma, or if I went in a coma today, I woke up in December, mid-December, and you said Texas won, it would be the least shocking thing that you would have told me. If you told me it was Georgia, it would be the most shocking thing that you would have told me. The thing for me about Texas is simple. Everybody wants to talk about Arch. Everybody wants to talk about Wisner and Baxter at running back. You know, the camp intel is that Baxter has looked really good. Sark even made it a point twice in his post-practice interview to bring up Baxter twice, unheralded to the actual question. The thing with Texas that continues to get missed, and it's all about the offense with Sark and the Ryan Wingo, and you're replacing the offensive line. You listen to anything about Texas at SEC Media Days. It's all about the offense because the golden child is here. I like Arch Manning. Have followed him living inside the state of Louisiana for a lot longer than most. I think he's going to be highly gifted. Everyone believes he's going to be highly gifted. The reason that Texas is a true contender is because of their front seven. That is where they're going to make their hay. Everybody wants to focus on Arch. Everybody wants to focus on Ryan Wingo. You talked about Gooseby being at left tackle, replacing Kelvin Banks, whatever they're going to do there. You're right. We can go there. Joe, they're returning more production in their front seven than anybody. You look at the two edge guys that almost had, one did have double-digit sacks, and the other is on the way there. They didn't even start. You got the edge guys coming back that did start. They've done really well, in my opinion, whether it be portal or just in recruiting and recruiting inside that interior. What is Anthony Hill in year 3? There are so many different things. Now, you look at their DB room, okay, for what it's worth. You got a lot of guys that return, but you also have some guys that you got to replace. What is Kobe Black out there at the boundary? You do have some safeties returning. Can Derek Williams find his way back? What is the 5-star in Jonah Williams? Joe, to be real with you. So we'll find that out. But the bottom line is right now to me, this front seven might be the best in the entire country, and I think that they are. If you look up in December and Texas is able to overcome Georgia, Bama, LSU, whoever it may be, it's going to be because that front seven dominated the way that we think that they dominated. Again, I like Arch, but the reason, Joe, that I know that you have them winning and I do not, I need to see them get past Georgia. I will talk about Georgia later, but I do think from some things that Georgia and the depth that they have, and I know this is going to sound crazy, I'll get to it in a minute. I need to see Texas overcome them first. Can you win the conference? Can you win the SEC? They surely can, and I believe that they're talented enough to do it. I need to see you go into Georgia twice and do it, whether it be in Atlanta or you start dominating and you take it to them in Athens. Regardless of where it is and when it is, you got to go to the state of Georgia twice to take it from them, and I think you can do it. The question is, will you be able to do it this season?
To toss in there for anyone wondering what the projected win totals, Texas is 9.5 on FanDuel, and I think that they're going to crush that. I think you brought up the key part here, though. The front seven that Texas has is going to be the driving force, and we're about to talk about Georgia in a second. I think that this front seven is comparable to. I'm not comparing it to the Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis defensive lines. I'm not doing that. But this front seven is not far off from some of the really gifted, explosive front sevens we saw from Georgia when they were right on the front door of winning a national title, and when they were getting to national titles in those first years of that stretch. They had high 4 stars, 5-star guys at key positions that were flying all over the field in their front seven, just making plays. That's what this group has. They're going to kick ass, and they're going to really dominate and out physical a lot of teams in their schedule. I understand where you're coming from, though. Like, I totally get where this does come down to the nut cutting time of, can you beat Georgia? You're going to have to play them twice. I think that a lot of people would agree with us that they're probably going to have to play them twice in the SEC championship game outside of having to travel to Athens. It feels like after losing twice last year, that Sark is the type of coach that is going to be so motivated and locked in to not let that get to him this time around. I'm kind of banking on that and I'm putting faith in it, but it feels like one of those situations where he is going to be so focused on Georgia solely that they're going to have to get them at some point and get them in the SEC championship game. Like, I would be shocked if they lost to them twice again.
I wouldn't.
That's what I'm getting at.
It happened to Kirby with Nick. It
would not. But eventually Kirby broke through.
Yeah, but in a national title game. Like, it took him literally 4 tries to do it. And he's only done it once.
Okay.
So, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but you're going to have to show me that you can go into Athens and do it. Look, I'll tell you, and I'm going to repeat this against Georgia. When it came down to it for me, it was that you're going on the road to Athens. Bottom line. That's what it came down to me. I'm like, look, man, these teams are so close. This game's at home. Georgia went on the road and beat you in your old place. They did. Now, Joe, I want to see what happens with their offensive line. Can they run the football? Both of these teams have these issues. Can you run the football against a really good team? Can you find ways to run the football? Because, Joe, if you can't, you're going to find yourself exactly where you were. Can Baxter and Wisner both do that? We'll 100% see. But, again, the one thing that also I want to point out, a lot of people talk about, like, Texas isn't I don't want to say that they're not replacing a lot, because they are. You had one of the top tackles in the country that left and got drafted. But, Joe, Makuba and Barron had 10 interceptions combined, right? I'm not saying that their secondary is going to be bad in the slightest, but there's a lot of production that you got to overcome. I do think their front seven is legit, but here's the great thing about Texas more than anything. We get to find out very early because they go on the road to Ohio State. We'll find out a lot about this team.
Well, and Elks shot us a super chat about this, that what happens if Arch does struggle and things don't look that good against Ohio State. I don't think that's going to happen. Like, I don't think we're going to get struggle from Sane and Arch. I think it's going to be a pretty good battle between the two of them. But to what you just said, we're going to know immediately. Like, we're going to know immediately if it's going to be a long season of frustration and question marks and talking about liabilities that are holding them back. Or we're going to spend the whole season talking about their O-line being dominant, their run game being dominant, their D-line being overwhelming, Arch looking fantastic. How they play in that first game, there's no walk-in, slow walk-up to getting ready for the season. This is the truest test that you can get going on the road to Ohio State.
Agreed. But if we're talking about preseason comps to Elks, as an example, and talking about Ohio State, you just won a national title with someone who got benched at Kansas State. So, like, what I'm not going to do for Arch is I'm not going to take 1 week of him starting and him being in his true, real first start and say, like, oh, the writing's on the wall for Arch Manning. You know, and I'm not saying Elks is saying that, but if that were to happen and he, quote unquote, looks bad, there will be a couple of different talking points. Hey, man, he's a young QB. Like, I literally saw Peyton Manning go on the road against Florida and look like straight garbage. Like, his own uncle did it in the SEC. His own uncle did it when he tried to go up against a Big Ten team. I'm not just going to throw out the baby with the bathwater because he has a bad start. The good news is he kind of did get a couple of starts, I guess, last season to get his bearings under him to see, I guess, what happens here. All right. So, Joe, I have Georgia at number 1. I know we just got done talking about Texas, but you have Georgia as the number 2 team. You think that they're going to obviously get into the playoffs. They're going to get to Atlanta, but they're going to come up short against Texas. When you look at the University of Georgia, you have them at 2. What do you think about them going into 2025 and why you have them there?
Like you said with Texas, it's such a close, narrow decision, but we have to pick somebody to win the conference. There are just a lot of things to get excited about with this Georgia team. Gunnar Stockton steps in, a different type of quarterback who's willing to use his legs, unlike what Carson Beck did last year. I think that his leadership, the way that he's going to be able to rally everybody, is going to be great. The receiving unit that they have for this upcoming season is fantastic. The tight end room is very promising. Mm-hmm. The supporting cast and weapons that Stockton has is way better than what Carson Beck had last season. So that's the first reason to feel optimistic is they can take some shots. They can be aggressive. Zachariah Branch is somebody who I'm like so excited to see what he does in this offense. They're resetting a little bit defensively, but I think that there's a lot of guys that people don't know enough about that were rotational players that are going to step up. I think like guys like Raylan Wilson are going to be fantastic for them in linebacker. I think that Christian Miller is one of the most under-talked about defensive linemen in the country, could end up being an All-American if he plays to his potential. They are always well recruited. They are always going to have blue chip guys in the wings ready to go. My biggest question mark, though, is does the offensive line reset effectively enough that they're not having the same problems that they had in the middle of the season last year, where Carson Beck wasn't protected properly? And can Gunnar Stockton live up to the hype, live up to what we're hoping to get out of him? Because if he's average, there's really not going to be much of a jump in quarterback performance from Beck from a year ago.
The overall perception that I have right now going into the season about the University of Georgia is this. We look at a team that last season, when you look at Georgia and them going 11-1, Joe, people are casting them off as if, because Gunnar Stockton lost against Notre Dame in his first ever start in a playoff game that got delayed a day because a stupid terrorist did ungodly acts in New Orleans. Like, all these things were on Gunnar Stockton's shoulders. His head coach lost his father the night before. Like, okay. Can we settle down on Georgia for just a minute? I think they are replacing a lot. Gabe Harris is someone at edge that everybody is extremely high on right now, who is replacing some very talented dudes. You got multiple 5-stars like McLeod, Griffin, Hall, Miller, who you've talked about. They don't rebuild. They got youth, but they reload. And the question and the thing that in the people looking down on Georgia, which I don't think people understand, they don't get the benefit of the doubt from last season in reference to injuries. They don't get the benefit of the doubt because their quarterback went down the SEC championship game. They don't get the benefit of the doubt of, hey, guess what? Even if Gunnar Stockton isn't as quote-unquote good as or talented as what his predecessor was, his predecessor threw 12 picks last year. Joe, we literally saw them at their floor, and they won the conference, and they won 11 games. So, again, I hear the narrative, defensively, they didn't meet their standard a year ago. Well, they did meet their standard. The reason they didn't, quote-unquote, meet it is because the quarterback kept turning the ball over on their own side of the 50. There was a lot that they had to overcome. Now, looking at this season, Joe, I got to be real with you. They're better offensively. I think everybody only focuses on Gunnar Stockton. And you're right. They should. The quarterback position is a big deal. I'm not completely sold on him. And we've talked about this. I think he's talented. I think he's tough. I think the team rallies around him. Can he get the ball to his playmakers is one thing. You also lost to Notre Dame, and Dylan Bell dropped a 45-yard pass that might have gone for 7 before that game started getting really bad, and you couldn't do anything offensively. Joe, I saw a team all offseason that's pissed off. And I think everybody, for whatever it's worth, even though they have them at 2 because it's Georgia, have somewhat written them off. Here's the thing that ultimately separates it from me, and it's pretty simple. Last year, they had the number 1 strength of schedule. All of those games in the SEC, They had to go on the road. They had to go on the road to Bama. They had to go on the road to Texas. They had to go on the road to Ole Miss, and they lost 2 of them. Joe, all those games are at home. And you got a pissed-off Georgia fan base and a pissed-off head coach that's ready to take it to you. You're right. They got youth. But I've seen this story before. This story of, oh, man, they didn't lose with all their – they didn't win with the talent that they had. They should have won it. No, they had some problems going on. I think Gunnar Stockton, for what it's worth, will make this defense better. Yes, you heard what I just said correctly, mainly due to the fact that they're not going to turn the ball over as much as they did. Joe, they have 5 5-stars along their defensive line. I'm not worried about Kirby Smart and their secondary. I'm just not. Because the last time I saw some young safeties go out there, well, they turned out to be first-round picks again. So, listen, where it separated for me, I told you this, when it came down to Texas, Joe, their 4 toughest games, whether it be Texas, whether it be Bama, whether it be Tennessee, or whether it be Ole Miss or Georgia Tech, 4 of the 5 are in the state of Georgia. That's why I'm taking them, because I think that we saw a team last year that went on a lot of tough road battles. I think if they're injury-free to some extent, I think Nate Frazier, Zachariah Branch, and Gunnar Stockton, along with Frazier and McCray in this running game, they're going to figure it out.
On FanDuel, Georgia's win total is 9.5. Also on FanDuel, they're plus 280, as I said earlier, to win the conference. I understand the argument that you're making, and I think that there's 2 sides to it, because what you're saying is correct. Last year, they were struggling in the middle of the season. A lot of people were criticizing them, saying that they were cooked. Everybody's caught up to them. They've got all these problems, and they still won the conference. So that should get everybody's attention and realize they were aggressive at fixing some problems and rebuilding some of their position groups that needed some help. But the counter argument to that now, Blake, is the rest of the conference also geared up. Last year was a bit of a down year, specifically a quarterback that led to a lot of teams struggling in the SEC last season. Not struggling to like the point where they were terrible, but just not playing as great as we would have expected. Teams like LSU and Alabama and Florida and Texas A&M and Texas, as we just talked about, they all got better too. All those teams got better. So that now presents challenges when you're fighting to win the conference again. You're not the only other team that improved. So I agree with you. It's just that context does give me a little bit of pause before jumping to that.
I don't trust Ty Simpson on the road in Athens. I need to see Arch Manning go on the road and beat Kirby Smart in Athens. I need to see Tennessee have a pulse. There gets a point in time here where I'm like, all right, all of you are saying, no, Georgia's going to be Joe, did you see some of these predictions got Georgia at 8-4, by the way? I guarantee you Kirby's put that.
Who had them at 8-4?
I forget the podcast, but they got like a 50, 60,000 subs. Oh, yeah. I mean, like, ridiculous. You better gear up. I'm putting all my chips in on Georgia because I need to see. I'm going to have to see people go into the state of Georgia and beat Kirby Smart because I don't think it's happening. I really don't.
I'm blown away that
I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you. But it was kind of went viral on Saturday because Georgia fans were like over under of how quick Kirby put this in his in the locker room
on the bulletin board.
Yes.
That's why. Yeah, I'm gonna need you to send me that.
I'll find it. Just remind me.
That is.
He's gonna put it all over there. But regardless, I got them at 1. On FanDuel, it's even, like you said. Texas at 280. You at Georgia at 280. Again, for me, it's 1A, 1B. I still think that Texas can beat them for what it's worth. I don't think you're invisible. The last thing I'd say, Joe, you're right about their offensive line. Can they figure it out? Because last year they just could not run the ball. All right. Joe, at 3, you have LSU. And at 3, I have LSU. When we look at Louisiana State University going into the season in 2025, you have them as a playoff team. Why?
Well, LSU fans, I'm sorry. Whenever I hype you guys up, it doesn't really go well. So I'm sorry.
You put us at 16th.
Yeah, I should have put you guys at 16th. You don't know this though. So a lot of the guest spots that I've done on radio stations across the country, I've been hyping up LSU. I have been talking a lot about why LSU will make a playoff this year. Brian Kelly has to break through for his own good, for the future of this program. He has to break through, but this isn't something that's going to be some insurmountable task, because he's got a lot of the green flags that you look for in a team that gets to a playoff, maybe wins a game or two. You got a returning quarterback, second year with his offensive coordinator. You have boosted talent along your defense, and they showed signs of improvement down the stretch. I think that where I feel a lot better about this LSU team and why they're actually going to get it done this season, last year, if we went to last year's preview, I said, I don't know if I can trust this defense. I don't know if I can. I feel a lot better about this defense because Dominic McKinley is going to be, I think, a monster for them as he is growing and developing. And I'm, hearing all the weightlifting stories of how much he's been putting up on the bar during squats and stuff. It gets me excited. And Patrick Payton's a guy who I'm hoping he gets a chance to prove himself. Whit Weeks was a player who I was excited about in summer scouting when I was breaking down linebackers for 2026. And we all know that I really like Mansour DeLeone. There are athletes to be tapped into on defense. If their defense improves, if Garrett Nussmeier cleans up the mistakes just by like 60%, 70%, just gears it back a little bit, and they run the ball a little bit better, winning 10 ball games, actually winning 10 and going to the playoff is more so what the goal should be, but that is accomplishable.
LSU is fourth on this list per FanDuel, plus 700 to win the SEC. Joe, they're going to be better defensively. I don't know how much better. I don't know if they get into the top 30, which I think that they could hover around there. I've made some bold statements about them going into the season. I do think their edge room is absolutely ridiculous. They have 4 dudes that they can rotate in and out of there. And, Joe, I've been out there watching them at practice. This kid, Bernard Gooden, that they got from South Florida, is a problem. It's a problem. He has been extremely disruptive. Joe, last year, LSU and Blake Baker in the star position, the big slot safety, they sent pressure on passing downs. Pro Football Focus stated 50% of the time. I've seen Harold Perkins coming off the edge more than ever. More year one-ish on how they send him. Joe, it's week 1 in fall camp, and I'm out there, so I'm a little bit biased of the understanding. Defensively, I think you're right. I think you've got a guy who's taking a lot of reps in Ashton Stamps, Mansour DeLeone, and some things moving into the slot. A.J. Halsey coming down and run support. LSU has not had this level of safety play. They just hadn't. It's been a week. I don't care. Their safety play was 16 out of 16 Pro Football Focus put out there with Sage Ryan and Major Burns. Don't care. They're going to be better defensively. Their offensive line has been a little bit struggling, replacing 4 of their starters. The question for me is simple. Can you run the football and stop the run? The 2 biggest areas that they have struggled in is, can they run the ball? Can they stop the run? Joe, they could, in every SEC loss they've had the last 3 years, they're giving up 250 rushing yards per game. That can't happen. I do think they're more physical up front. I do think in the 4 years, this being the 4th, this reminds me a little bit more of the physicality that I saw in 2022. They are a lot more physical defensively up front. I'm worried about their offensive line.
Yep.
And I'm worried about the run game. You hit one thing on the head here I'd say about LSU. Garrett has got to stop turning the ball over. You can't have the same comments about Carson Beck and not have the same comments about Garrett Nussmeier. Both of them had 12 picks. If he reduces that, then I think LSU could be cooking with grease. The thing is with LSU for me, they got to start off 1-0. And I know that Clemson's not a conference game. The problem in that is that I don't know if LSU, if they lose that one from a morale standpoint, you're going to have some big leadership in that room to take over. Do you have that? Joe, if they go 1-0, yeah, put them at 3-4, getting into the playoff. If they can't do that, I think it will affect this team. in some regards, because you got to go on the road to Bama, you got to go on the road to Ole Miss, you got to go on the road to Oklahoma to end the season. Those are some big hurdles. Is Oklahoma going to be any good? I don't know. Joe, I think they're just more talented. And if 8-4 is their floor, do they not lose a couple of the games that they should have won a season ago?
By the way, their win total on FanDuel 8.5. I would take the over on that, by the way. I think that their schedule is survivable enough for them to win 10 ball games. The biggest thing with all of this is just me reiterating what you just brought up with Garrett Nussmeier. He has a lot of potential to be a really impactful quarterback. There's a reason why he's always brought up in Heisman conversations. I just need him to better understand where he can succeed. I think that his ability to sense pressure has kind of hurt him. With the new offensive line, that's going to be possibly a problem if the offensive line doesn't gel quickly and they're not playing great and they're not protecting him. If he can stand in the pocket better and not roll out into pressure as poorly as he did last year and just be more willing to take the check down, not trying to take the home run play and take the shot that's not really there, those turnovers, he goes from 12 to all I need is him to get down to like 7 or 8. That's transforming into a lot of those picks came in like multitudes. Like he had multi-interception games.
Yeah, he had 9.
If he has a couple of games where he goes 1 or 0 and he doesn't have any multi-interception games, this team's 10-2. I agree with what you're saying about Clemson. I just kind of wonder, as long as that game's close, I think that they're going to be smart enough to realize, or I hope that they'd be smart enough to realize, hey, it's a damn good football team. We lost to them on the road. Maybe it could be a rallying point. But if it's not close, which I don't think is going to happen, yeah, that's when the morale starts to kind of tank.
We'll see. You're going to have some strong leadership. I will say this, at wide receiver, I think they're better, and they weren't bad a year ago.
Yeah.
I don't think they were bad. Chris Hilton, Aaron Anderson, Barry Brown, Nick Anderson, I think they can lean on that too. Joe, the 4th team that we have here in our rankings, I have Bama at 4. You do as well. The 2025 season is interesting. A lot of hope coming out of Tuscaloosa. When you look at Bama, who on with our good partners over at FanDuel are plus 480 to win the SEC, and you look into this 2025 season, why do you have them as the 4th best team in the SEC?
Their FanDuel win total, by the way, is 9.5 wins, which feels awfully high. I don't know if I'm like fully ready to commit to them going 10-2, but it is accomplishable. It's plausible with the schedule that they have in front of them. I feel optimistic for this team taking a step forward because as much as I like Jalen Milroe and I loved him as a player, the instincts were brutal at times. And he wasn't really getting the help that he needed from his receiving unit outside of Ryan Williams and also the play calling. I think that Ryan Grubb steps in and Ty Simpson is going to be a nice breath of fresh air. Don't think he takes the world by storm by any means, but I think that he's going to be a little bit more reined in his decision-making. And I think that the play calling, again, is going to set him up for better success. The biggest reasons why, though, Blake, I see a 10-2 Bama team this year, their offensive lines and defensive lines last year were super young and inconsistent. This year, those units are now more experienced, and I think a lot of those guys showed a lot of flashes that typically we get from guys who take jumps in year 2 to year 3, from sophomore year to junior year, or just into an upcoming season. I think that their O-line with Parker Brailsford and Caden Proctor, I think on defense, you have James Smith and you have a lot of different guys that you can tap into that are going to be really productive and some of the best defensive linemen in the SEC. It is underrated on both sides because there were spurts where they really, really struggled. I think 1 year over this offseason and a change in offensive and defensive philosophy is going to help them reach that potential.
My biggest question for Alabama is very simple. It's not defense or defensive talent. It's not some of the weapons that you have on the outside or even some of the weapons that you have at tight end. Joe, it's Ty Simpson. And I don't know enough about him. I don't know if I know enough about him that in some of these games, like going on the road to Georgia, some of these games that you have, if they are shootouts, or even if there's crunch time situations where you got to throw the ball, Joe, I just don't know enough about him. There's something that we know that happens in football every single year, regardless of who your favorite team is. It doesn't matter if you're the greatest team of all time or you're a 10-2 team trying to make the playoff. You're going to be in games where when everything's on the line, can you win it? Now, again, I think Alabama, from a defensive perspective, by far has enough talent for them to do that. I do agree. In year one under Kalen DeBoer and Kane Womack, their defensive coordinator, they were young. Everybody was trying to figure it out. Personnel, culture, everything was being figured out, and they went 9-3. The question becomes, there were some things that I thought Jalen Milroe clearly did bad a season ago. And I hear the take of Ty Simpson is a better fit for Ryan Grubb than what Jalen Milroe was and is, and I agree with that. However, there were some situations in some games last year that Jalen Milroe did take over and win for you. Ty Simpson's going to have to do that as well. It was not Jalen Milroe's fault for all of your struggles. Joe, there were simple times that they just couldn't line up and run the football. But you do have one of the best wide receivers in the country who returns for a second year. How big of a leap does Ryan Williams make? Can he make? Is there situations where Ty Simpson is smart enough because he's been around the block enough to say, hey, man, you know what? Ryan Williams is out there somewhere. Isaiah Horton is out there somewhere. Bernard is out there somewhere. Are they good enough? That will be – I know Ryan Williams is. As a collective unit, can they be? The season for me is I don't know enough about Ty Simpson. I've seen some fall camp intel stuff. Can he be that guy that they need him to be? Is it finally his time? We'll find out and see. But, Joe, I also look at this offensive line and say – you lose Booker, you lose some other pieces, and like even then last year you couldn't run the ball. So the last game I saw you against Michigan, it wasn't your best. I think guys like Caden Proctor have got to step it up. I think there's been some times where they've gotten out-physicaled. The bottom line here is this. I do think even if you get average play from them in Alabama at quarterback, Joe, I agree with you. Defensively, they just got enough talent. Guys like Dijon Lee is the freshman. A lot of people think he's going to start. You're a big fan of LT Overton. What does that front seven look like? They got some real dudes there. Again, I think it all falls into me that I can't have them, or I'm not going to say I can't have them. I don't know if Ty Simpson, for an example, can separate themselves and get Bama where they want to go back, like going into Athens and winning those games. Do I think you could beat LSU and all these other teams that are on your schedule? Yes. But, Joe, the question is you have them in the top four, shuffle them however you want. Is Ty Simpson going to be the guy that leads you there?
And also to add a couple more guys on defense, Deontay Lawson is freaking awesome. Tim Keenan is a monster in the middle. And Damani Jackson, as well as Xavier Brown, two extremely underrated corners, two guys that I hyped up a lot early last year when there were questions about how good their secondary was going to be. I think that secondary is going to get a lot better. There's just defensively is where I think I feel the best. Defensively, they were really shaky and they were all over the place. I think that you're going into this upcoming season with a group of guys that have a ton of potential for them to be really, really disruptive. Like very disruptive. I think the play calling needs to be a little bit better, but we're not going to see Blake them getting smoked by Vandy again by bad decision making. Smoked's a little aggressive because it was a close loss, but being completely in a blender because they don't know how to defend Vanderbilt. They've had an offseason to prepare for that. They're not going to let that loss happen again. I'd be shocked if they lost to Vanderbilt at home, and I'd be even more shocked if they don't smoke them by 2 to 3 plus scores because they're so pissed off about putting that energy out into them. So I think a lot of their problems that they had last year and their losses that they had last year with a weaker roster overall, their worst games came from just lapses in focus, lapses in intensity, in judgment. If they're more locked in, they're going to be fine. But remember the big talking point, Blake, that we had was turnovers and penalties. I know that's a big ask to improve those things, but that's like a mid-season first-year coach problem that I think can be resolved, not entirely, but at least improved upon in an offseason.
Maybe. There is one thing that scares me defensively, though. So one thing that does scare me defensively is, Joe, I thought they just got out coached a lot. I can live with you being out athleted. Like I'm not. There's not a problem.
Right.
Like I can live with, hey, a guy like Ryan Williams went stupid, and they had a better guy on that play. The problem when they had some of these losses were, Joe, they just got pushed around, and then secondly, schematically, they didn't change anything up defensively. So I'm not going to say that they're, completely fixed. Womack's got a lot that he's got to overcome himself too. I mean, you can't keep running man coverage and keep having the same aspect like what happened in Vandy. Run cover too. Do something. Don't just sit there. All of their losses last year came on the road. Every one of them, all 4 of them. Question becomes, can you go on the road? Because you're going to have to win. Even if you go 10-2, one of those games you lost last year and you floundered down your face. And by the way, Joe, they almost gave up the game to South Carolina there at the end. I mean, there comes a point in time where you would not change things defensively. Lenore Sellers started. It was the second half of that game was Lenore Sellers' come out party.
Yeah.
I mean, so again, we'll see about Alabama. All right, Joe, at number 5, you have the University of Florida, and I am not right there with you. I have Ole Miss, but you could put Florida there, I guess.
Stop it. Don't change your mind.
DJ Lagway injury stuff does bother me a little bit.
Fair.
That's why today, if you remember all those crumpled up papers I said I had Florida at 5, but I'm just like, man, if this kid gets hurt, I don't know what's going on. But the University of Florida is at 5 for you, and they're at 6 for me. What makes you think Florida, probably a 9-3 team on the outside looking in?
FanDuel win total is 7.5. Also in FanDuel, SEC championship odds are plus 1,800. They're actually 6th highest in odds, which is pretty surprising. I'm sure that there's a lot of people driving that up as like a dark horse pick. I don't want to let the DJ Lagway injury stuff impact my decision-making because no games have been played. In a vacuum, if he's on the field, they have an incredibly talented roster. Let's revisit the notion of what that does for the team after he gets on the field and after he gets banged up, if that even happens at all.
Fair.
I don't want to let that happen affect my projection in the preseason. I am looking at all these things, best case scenario, is how do we get where we're trying to be? Their offensive and defensive line, quietly, some of the best in the conference. They have a top 3 defensive line, top 3 offensive line. The experience that they're bringing back with Austin Barber and Slaughter at center on their O-line, just to name the 2 most important guys. And then on D-line, Caleb Banks. We're the biggest fans of Caleb Banks on this show, as well as Tyreek Sapp, who's a dude as well. I think that the other part about this, we saw some great things from Lagway, but he didn't have the level of dynamic talent at receiver that he's going to have for this upcoming year because they added Michael Sturdivant into the mix. So you're getting a lot of just boosts and improvement after a nice finish to last year. That's why I think that Florida ends up being 9-3, but the tough schedule is probably going to bite them at some point, which prevents them from being a playoff team.
Is Florida a team, because of their schedule, if they go 9-3 and they lose in the outside the conference, that you can make the justification to get into a playoff?
I know Pate brought that up, and I think that it would be one of the first cases that I would feel comfortable going, put them in there over a Big Ten team.
Then let's just not even say a Big Ten team. Like, hypothetically, even inside their own conference, right? Because you could lose to one of these teams outside the conference and it not really mean anything, but you dominated some of these bigger teams inside your conference, and you got 2 losses. So Florida's schedule is that tough. Joe, I'm with you, and I understand if we're going to do the in the vacuum of DJ Lagway.
Okay.
You're correct. They probably need to be fifth on this list. But you can't. Or let me not say you can't. I can't. Okay? Because there comes a level of concern when I talk about them that Joe, last year they had to go to a backup quarterback. It was him. Graham Mertz got hurt. Sometimes season derailed. I am cautious about what's going on with him. However, if we're going to do in a vacuum, Joe, you talk about their offensive line and defensive line. I thought at the end of the year when they didn't fire Billy, you just saw a different team. The question becomes offensively with Jaden Ball, who's now going to be your lead back, some of the receivers that you got back. You bring in Dallas Wilson. Is he an electric freshman wide receiver like we saw two guys last year do it? Is he going to be one of those guys? We'll wait and see. They just return a lot. They are a lot better in their front seven than people understand and want to give them credit for. It's how they beat Ole Miss down the stretch. It's how they won all those games down the stretch. I understand the last time that they lost, it significantly was against Texas and DJ Lagway wasn't there. Joe, I need to see DJ Lagway make some better decisions. The reason I don't have them in a playoff versus some of these other teams is I thought defensively sometimes last year when they went on that little bit of a stretch to end the season on a very positive note, the defense bailed them out and won those games for them, whether it be Ole Miss, coming down with a couple of interceptions against Jackson Dart, coming up with the big plays against LSU, whatever game that you want to point out that got them to 8 wins the season ago. The bottom line for me is I do think that DJ can take that next step. He's got a lot more weaponry. The thing for me is in having them at 5, that means they're better than Ole Miss. That means they're better than South Carolina, A&M, Missouri, etc. Joe, I don't know if I trust them more than the talent that's on these other teams with their head coach. I think for me, when you get from 5, you get all the way down to about 10 in the SEC and on our list. Joe, put them all in a hat and shake it up and let the best teams win. Because quite honestly, I got so many question marks, and Florida's one of them. Now, don't you dare say that you're one of the biggest fans of Caleb Banks. That's my favorite player after you were pointed out to him on this show. I'm just throwing that out there. But
no, I found him on my own.
No, you didn't. There are 2 defensive linemen that could be first-round dudes. I don't care about the stats with Caleb Banks. Turn on that damn film. Joe, they're really talented up front. And that's why you have a lot of hope with them because of how talented they are up front. You win games in any big league by being able to stop the run and run the damn football. Joe, I saw a really tough team at the end of the season. And if they can continue to be that and do that, they might be knocking on the door of some of this.
The big part with me is you have these past couple years of struggling with Billy Napier. A lot of these guys stayed. A lot of these guys stuck around.
They didn't lose the game after they said they weren't going to fire him. I mean, the Texas thing, but Lagway wasn't there. They didn't lose, brother. You want to talk about buy-in?
I think that's where part of the misconception that I especially had is that I think a lot of his guys love playing for him.
Yeah.
And the largest part about all of this, you said this, and I agree with what you said, that if you go from like team 5 to 10, which includes Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Tennessee, South Carolina, Missouri, Ole Miss, those teams, those are good rosters. I don't think that they have the offensive and defensive line talent that Florida does. And I think DJ Lagway is the best quarterback of the bunch. I think Lenore Sellers is like right up there with him. He's the only guy that I would make the exception for that statement. But the rest of these, Lagway plays all 12 games. He is going to be at a special level. I really think that he will be. He is one of the few guys, we talk about like sophomores, how many sophomores are actually take over college football? Well, it's the guys that get to play a little bit their freshman year and get to go out there and make mistakes and go get blasted and hit and suffer injuries or whatever, go through the bumps and bruises of being a college player. And then now they're ready to step up to the plate. I'm just praying that he stays healthy, because if he does, this will be a special season. This will be a momentum builder. If they go 9-3, that opens the door for a huge season in 2026. And as you just said, you go 9-3 with this freaking gauntlet of a schedule. It will be the first 9-3 team in any power conference to to bypass all other teams. Like, they should absolutely deserve to get in. I don't want to hear the bullshit of they only won 9 games. That is going to be a blind, stupid statement at the end of the year. With the schedule that they're about to face, the hardest schedule in the country, that will be the dumbest statement that anybody can make. And I promise you, I will clip this and I will save it for when we come back to talk about this at the end of the year. And I'm just going to go and comment it underneath people's posts where they're saying Florida shouldn't be in. I'm just going to go back in here and say that is a dumbass, blind, ignorant statement because you're ignoring the fact that they're going through such a difficult schedule.
The reason I had Ole Miss ahead of them is based off of pure opinion and me being an Austin Simmons stan account.
Okay, but the rest of their roster is
Don't care. Here's
they lost
what
their whole line, D-line. Like, what do they have besides Austin Simmons and Logan Diggs?
They went out and got some former 5-star defensive linemen. That's why they were number 2 class in the portal.
They had a better defense last year, and they couldn't
return Perkins. Perkins had double-digit sacks in the SEC a year ago.
Perkins is a good player. The gigantic kid that they have at defensive tackle is escaping me, and I can't remember his name. He's number 51.
Continue.
But I'm just saying though that like this, it's a pretty bare roster compared to what last year. It's a lot of new faces coming in.
It's funny you bring that up because let me just throw something at you, my little whippersnapper. Lane Kiffin has won 39 games the last 4 seasons at Ole Miss. Every single year, everyone says, "Oh, they're replacing so much." Oh. And they go out there and win 9 to 10 games a year.
I think this
it's
is different.
The same narrative every year. I'm an Austin Simmons stan account. By the way, the defensive lineman that you were thinking about that you forgot to bring up was Harris, Xavion Harris.
Yes. I hope that they use him like God, who was I'm awful with names today. Who was the Wildcat defensive lineman that they used last year?
Yes, I know.
Pegues, JJ Pegues. I hope that they use Harris as the same way that they use Pegues because Harris is like double his size.
I'm just going all in on Austin Simmons. Everybody's going to be like, "You're bought in on the drive," and you know what? Screw it. Yes, I am. I'm bought in.
See, I'm not going to do that. I actually watched DJ Lagway play, and he had a lot less going for him. So I'm taking DJ Lagway.
I mean, dude did something DJ Lagway couldn't do.
What was that? Beat Georgia?
I mean, run a drive.
Well, he didn't beat Georgia. He scored a touchdown against Georgia. So
basically,
DJ Lagway got hurt against Georgia. So that's not fair.
Basically, Joe. So we talked about some of these. Any other teams on our list here that you want to get to?
Yeah, I want to rip off a couple of quick takes. Not to like overwhelm time. I just want to throw mine back up here. I think Kentucky's awful, and I think that they're going to get completely smoked this season. I'm giving Taylon Green a little bit of a bump because I think that this roster is pretty gross, but I think that Taylon Green and David Oakey at defensive tackle is extremely underrated, who transferred from Abilene Christian. Dude got a lot of preseason, great preseason grades from the NFL. I think Arkansas can sneak up on some people like they did last year. The last one that I want to talk about, though, just like really quickly, Blake, Missouri is a total enigma because they have a really easy schedule. They have the easiest schedule in the SEC by a long shot. For some reason, Missouri fans were in our comments when we did their preview saying that was a ignorant statement, which is stupid. Go look at all the schedules. They have the easiest schedule.
Yeah,
they have a weak roster, though. They have a weaker roster. It's not a bad roster, but like I feel like that there's a lot of holes with a lot of guys that they just sent off to the NFL. I don't know what they're going to be.
Okay, I got to push back on you on something on your list.
Okay,
I can't have Tennessee above. For me, Tennessee cannot be above South Carolina and Oklahoma. They can't. Joey Aguilar turned the ball over at an alarming rate in the G5. What's going to happen when he goes to one of these bigger P4 schools and against a really tough conference? I mean, I cannot do that. They're blurring out the quarterback that threw the interception at practice because they don't want anybody knowing. They got a lot that they have to replace defensively. I have sold stock on Tennessee. Completely sold stock. John Mateer, Arbuckle, Jalen Ott, and the boys in Oklahoma. Listen, I never would have thought I'd say this. I think they're going to go in there and get some revenge. Like, I think Oklahoma is better than Tennessee post-Nico. I mean, I just can't buy into the Joey Aguilar, and if they got to go to a first-time quarterback, I don't know if I can do that.
Here's my only thing. They fall into a very similar bucket to what I just said with Missouri. I agree with everything that you just said. I think that Mateer and Oklahoma and R. Mason Thomas and that defense and all that stuff's going to mesh together like really well. They're going to be super
Oklahoma's got
dangerous
a tough schedule.
Insanely hard schedule. South Carolina, I was grappling with this. I honestly probably should have put South Carolina ahead of them. And this is me kind of saying that I'm verbally swapping them. But these are the three. These are the only like 3 hard road games that I see on the schedule
For Tennessee?
For Tennessee. Alabama, Florida. They get to host Georgia, which they're probably not going to beat, but they get to host Georgia, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Vandy. They go to Kentucky. That's one of their road games. They go to Mississippi State. That's one of their road games. As much of a problem as a lot of those things are, their D-line, and as odd Joey Aguilar is going to be in this offense, nobody knows what that's going to look like. They have a path that is very, very easy. Very, very easy for them to go 8-4. I think all those teams are going to go 8-4, by the way. I think all of them.
Oh, well, if they all go 8-4, then Tennessee would have to lose to Oklahoma. You see what I'm saying? Like they'd have to, based off the schedule you just read off. I mean, because you can't lose to Oklahoma, because if you're 8-4, then you're going to have to lose to Oklahoma, Georgia, Alabama, and one of those other teams.
Well, 8-4 gives you a chance to drop like a game that you're not supposed to.
I can't get there with them. My sock is stoled. I can't get there with you. I got to tell you, I'm buying Oklahoma stock right now. I'm bought in.
So ironic. It's so ironic, but I agree with you. I agree with you.
I'm bought in now.
But here's my only thing, though, Blake, is that their schedule is the second hardest next to Florida, and they don't have the same level of momentum as Florida, and I don't think their offensive line even touches Florida's. Like, I don't even think it's close.
No, well, that's why I got Florida ahead of them.
I know, but what I'm trying to get at is, like, for them to be more than – again, I have them going 8-4. To be 8-4.
Here's the thing. When I'm starting to separate some of these teams, for me, and you're probably right on how you're breaking it down. For me, I'm not taking Joey Aguilar over Lenore Sellers or John Mateer. I can't do it. I cannot do it. I'm right, wrong, or indifferent, schedule indifferent. I get what you're saying. But for right now going in this, I can't do it.
I do kind of regret not having – I think as I'm saying this out loud, I am moving South Carolina ahead of Tennessee. I regret that's a mistake on my part. South Carolina should be ahead of Tennessee because Sellers and Stewart are going to do enough to keep them alive, but they're another team that also has a really, really hard schedule.
Yeah, they do. All right. Any other things you want to get to or touch on before we head out of here? Any super chats that we missed? Anything?
We have a couple people that are referencing. We have some Slappy in the chat who's referencing that TJ Parker quote that you had.
Please personally tell Nuss to run at TJ Parker, please. Well, first off, you have man titties. Second off, this is the comment that I had, if I need to address it here too.
Yeah.
That's not a shot at Clemson or TJ Parker. It's a shot at LSU's got to be more physical. And if anybody literally would have watched the entire video, they would have come out here and heard that I literally called him the best edge in college football 30 seconds before that clip. So that's number one. But number two, okay, it's a shot at LSU to tell you to be more physical. Run right at – Garrett had such a problem of wanting to tuck the ball and run. Let's go take it to somebody's ass. Don't come in here talking about goofy shit if you're Clemson when your head coach is going down a slide before practice. Don't come in here talking goofy shit now.
I don't disagree. And I understood what your sentiment was when I saw this clip. I've seen it a couple times on TikTok, by the way. I keep people keep reacting to that clip. Shout out to Chris for cutting off you talking, hyping up TJ Parker, cutting that part out of it.
Basically, every time I go on with Chris Phillips, bad shit happens.
Every time. I think you're batting 100 for that.
I mean, it's my job to get millions and millions of views. So there we go.
Yeah.
Taylor Johnson says Texas's defense will be better this year. D-line is dirty.
Yeah.
Front seven, yes, but Joe, I mean, you're replacing guys that combined with 10 interceptions. That's a bit much.
The D-line's deep, though. They're comically deep, the amount of guys that they brought in the portal that they didn't need. Hiro Kanu is a guy that I really like, by the way. That's like a rotational player for them. So they've got bodies. I agree with you about the secondary stuff, though. We got to see how they replace Makuba and Barron.
Very true. All right. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Big Ten, I'm assuming tomorrow.
Big Ten tomorrow.
We'll see y'all then. Y'all have a good night. Peace.